So again, welcome everybody. Still some people finding a place. Please sit down anywhere you like. You can sit on the floor, you can also sit on a chair. If anybody feels like changing from the floor to a chair, please do so as well. It's important that we have these chairs here because, as I said at the start of the meditation, it's important to find some comfort in meditation, and some people find more comfort sitting on a chair. I think most of you actually. Okay. I think most people have found their spot. So I will start a Dhamma talk for this evening. And when Bill did the announcements, he said in one of his announcements that, I can't even remember where it was. I should have remembered where it was, because he said, someplace, sometime, there is the unlimited food and entertainment. Wow. And when I heard, I was sitting like this through the announcement, blah, 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 and then unlimited food and entertainment. What? Woke up. Because that's not what you get as a monk. So for those who are listening online, I said, oh, can I come? As a monk, you have limited food and entertainment. Very limited food and limited entertainment. Usually I eat just once a day. But I'm very healthy. Don't need to eat twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, unlimited times a day. Well, if you have unlimited food, then it's also eating 1 time a day, right? Just continue all day long. But that's not what I mean. I usually just have 1 lunch, and I'm very happy with that. And I say, monks have very limited entertainment. But is that true, Venerable Kalama? He's so entertained right now within, you see? He doesn't even hear what I'm saying. We get lots of entertainment as monks, actually. But we find entertainment inside ourselves, in meditation. But we don't have much entertainment in the worldly sense, right? I used to listen to lots of music when I was a lay person. That's a whole CD collection. And played in a band. I played the drums, I played guitar, not at the same time obviously, but in the band I played the drums. And I always listened to music, and I thought, becoming a monk, that's going to be so difficult to give up the music. Yeah, that's what I thought. But that was actually so easy to give up. Sometimes people say, I want to become a monk, but I'm a musician, so difficult. But it's actually very easy, because we find entertainment somewhere else. We find entertainment actually in peace, in quiet, especially the quiet of the mind. And if you get a bit skillful in that, it takes time, it takes practice, it doesn't always work. But when it works, it can be so beautiful, it can be so enjoyable. You just sit there, nothing to do, nowhere to go, just happy to be there. It sounds dull, maybe, but I know some of you know what I'm talking about. You can sit there, your mind becomes quiet, and your thoughts disappear, and there's just being there. And then so much happiness can arise. And that's how monks actually have unlimited entertainment in that way. I hope you also find some of that. But there's all things in the mind that can stand in the way of peace. Yeah? If meditation was so easy that you just sit down, you hear the instructions once, just be in the present moment, find peace within, and you do it, and you're always peaceful, then there would be no need for meditation instructions. There would be no need for Dhamma talks. There would be no need for the Buddha to teach us. But there is that need, because the mind can be a bit rebellious. Yeah, my mind anyway, and I see people nodding. Yeah, whose mind can be rebellious in meditation? Yeah? Please raise your hand. Yeah, okay, all right. Only Venerable Kalama didn't raise his hand. Very good. Yeah. Whose mind can be a bit slow in meditation as well. But that's the way it is. When you're not enlightened, then your mind can be a bit like that. So we try to deal with that in meditation and in life. And a few days ago, me and some of the monks, we were having a little cup of tea together, and we're just chatting a little bit. Yeah, usually we spend lots of time by ourselves, and I don't usually go to the tea time, but this time some monks came together and we were just chatting about all sorts of things. Yeah, just have some harmony. It's important to do that as well. And a topic came up, and this was, actually there was also somebody visiting who used to be an ex-convict. He was in a jail for some time. And he was telling us how in the jail some of the inmates cause trouble with other inmates because they find it difficult to forgive things that happened to them in the past. So we were talking about forgiveness during that tea time for some time. And I thought, that's actually a beautiful topic to talk about maybe during this weekend in Nalamara. Because forgiveness is one of the ways that we can let go of certain things in the past. And the past can come up in our meditation and disturb us in various ways, but one of the ways is if we are angry towards somebody, and that somebody can be somebody else, but it can be ourselves as well. And then it's a good way to let go of that anger by practicing forgiveness. So that's what I want to talk about today. Does that sound like a good plan, or you want me to talk about something else? Yeah? Well, if you don't want me to talk about forgiveness, then please forgive me. Because I'm gonna do it anyway. Well, I have to say, I would like to start this talk about forgiveness with a very inspiring story in my life, how I was so badly mistreated by somebody, and that I somehow struggled with it for years, and then I managed to forgive. But I have had a very kind people in my life, generally, and I don't have like a big major story of forgiveness from my own life. But I still thought it's a good topic to talk about. But I want to start with a little disclaimer that some of you might have been treated much more unfairly in life than me, by others especially. And then it might be very easy for me to say, just forgive, be happy, but I'm not in your shoes. And so I want to acknowledge that for some people, things have happened which are much, much harder to forgive than things that I have experienced in my life. And I can see that. So it can be much more of a challenge for you. But if I were in your shoes, then I hope that I would be able to forgive through the practice that I've done over the years. Because even if you've not been mistreated in a big way, we all engage with other people, and we all get mistreated in small ways from time to time. And even then you can carry a grudge towards somebody. And I want to talk a little bit about how we might be able to let that go, whether it's big or small. If it's big for you, that might take more time. If it's small, then maybe you can do it very quickly. But that's what I want to talk about. So instead of talking about what I want to talk about, let's talk about it. You never know what comes out of your mouth when you sit behind the microphone like this. So I've already forgiven myself for all the stupid things that I'm going to say. But since I did think of in advance of what I was going to talk about, or wanted to talk about, yeah, you never know, but I did prepare a story. And this is not a story from my life, although we could make it one. It's a story about two friends who were going for a hike in the desert. Maybe we should give these friends some names. So maybe these friends are Kalama and Sunyo. So Venerable Kalama and Venerable Sunyo. So it is a story about my life, just a fictional one. We're going for a walk in the desert. And Venerable Sunyo said to Venerable Kalama, I know the way through the desert. It's easy. We just follow this path and then we come to the round cactus. We go to the left and then we walk there and then we come back here. So let's go for a walk in the desert. Of course, Sunyo was not that good of a guide in the desert. And they got lost. Or should I switch the names around now? That one is the good guy in the story and one is the bad guy. And of course, Venerable Kalama should be the good guy. So they got lost. Okay, maybe it's not about Venerable Kalama and Venerable Sunyo then. So just two friends who happen to have the same name as us, but who weren't us. Okay, let's just call them John and Mary. That's more easy. John and Mary were walking through the desert. And John said, I know the way. This cactus, blah, blah, blah. Easy. And they were walking. But of course, John didn't know the way and they got lost. And then Mary got really upset with John. And said, you stupid John, you said you knew the way. Now we're lost and there's no water here. We're gonna die maybe, John. Started fighting with John. And was really upset. And then John wrote in the sand, today my friend heard me. And wrote it in the sand with his finger. And then, so John was actually the wise guy, you'll find out. So John was Venerable Kalama. Sunyo got lost, indeed. No, John got lost. Doesn't matter. John got lost in the desert and Mary got angry and John wrote, today my friend heard me. And then indeed, they could not find any water for many days. So Mary lost the consciousness. But then she woke up in an oasis. And John had carried her all the way through the oasis. And then, should be the other way around. I'm a bad storyteller. John lost consciousness. No? Yes. John lost consciousness. And Mary carried him all the way through the desert. Maybe I should prepare these talks, actually. So Mary carried him all the way through the oasis. And then John wrote in a stone. See, people are walking out already. They think this is such a bad talk. I fully agree. So, and then John wrote in the stone. Are you still following? Yeah? I'm not. So John wrote in stone, today my friend helped me, saved me. And then Mary asked, why did you wrote in the sand? Today my friend heard me, but you wrote in a stone. Today my friend saved me and helped me. Then John said, when people help me, I write it in stone because I want to remember it and keep it there forever. But when people hurt me, I write it in the sand so that the wind of forgiveness can blow it away when people hurt me. That's a beautiful story, I feel, if you tell it correctly. Did you get the gist of it? Okay. So, the wind of forgiveness can blow away our anger towards other people. And I feel that's true. I said before, I haven't really been hurt in a major way, but I know that the kindness that we can develop in our hearts can forgive people for the wrong they've done to us in life. And it's such an important thing to be able to do, because I talked about meditation before and how we can drag the past into our meditation. And even in the monastery, I sometimes talk to some of the monks and they say, oh, this monk, this did that to me, blah, blah, blah. And I see, when the way I see that monk behave, I know already if they're going to sit in meditation, they'll still be thinking, this other monk did this and that to me. Yeah, they might even think, Sunyo did this and that to me, and then they sit meditating like that. Then you never find peace. Yeah. It's so easy to say, let go of the past. But one thing I found so helpful to let go of certain things in the past is to forgive people for mistakes they've made, or things they've done to us. And that includes also ourselves as well. I'll come back to that later, because forgiveness is not just something we can have towards other people. It's something we can have towards ourselves as well. It's interesting that in the Buddhist text, the early texts, we call them the suttas, most of you know, actually you don't find much about forgiveness per se. Yeah? There are words which mean forgiveness, but there's no even a real sutta, a real text that's specifically about forgiveness. And that's because it already, I think, falls under the banner of loving kindness. If you don't forgive somebody, you have a grudge, you're like angry towards them. And the opposite of that is loving kindness. And that's loving kindness is a little bit of a Buddhist word, but it just means the acceptance, the peace that you can have with other people. And that your heart opens up to them. But one specific way to look at that loving kindness is through forgiveness, when you specifically look at the wrongs that people might have done to you. And you let that go. And that takes a little bit of wisdom. Just like loving kindness takes wisdom, forgiveness takes a certain amount of wisdom as well. As I said, as monks, we don't get much entertainment. The most entertainment might be these stupid stories like that. And, except for meditation, that is. But occasionally, I might listen to a podcast or something when people recommend it to me, especially when it is about Buddhist topics, when it is helpful. And I listened to a podcast by somebody called Joe Rogan. He's apparently very famous, has a big podcast. Has anybody ever listened to? Yeah. Well, I didn't get a good vibe from Joe Rogan per se myself, but he had a very inspiring guest. And this guest was a journalist. And this journalist had been doing all sorts of stories in his life, but then he decided to do a story about the pirates that are in Somalia. Yeah, you've heard of them probably in the news. I don't really watch the news, but I did get this idea that there's this already before I ordained, I knew about it. There's these pirates in Somalia, and they try to board boats, like the big ships, and then they ask for ransom money for the ships. To get the ship back to the owner, they ask for money. But that's not the only thing they do, though. They misbehave in other ways as well. But this journalist wanted to write a story about it, so he went to Somalia. And at some point, actually, he was just driving in his car, and suddenly, people with guns on the road. You see where this is going, maybe. He got kidnapped by the pirates. So they don't only kidnap boats, they also kidnap people, especially Westerners, apparently, because they expect to get a lot of money from them. So this man was talking in that podcast about how this all happened. I won't relate that whole story, but they kept him for 3 years captured in a cell. Yeah? They moved him around a little bit from time to time, from place to place, so they couldn't find him. Yeah, the army or whoever was looking for him, but they couldn't find him. And for 3 years he was kept captive. And they did ask for a big ransom, but so much money nobody could pay. And of course he got really desperate there, that man. You can understand. Wow, imagine. We might have been mistreated in our lives, pretty badly, some of you, I'm sure. But being captured by Somalian pirates for 3 years, that's also pretty shitty. That's being mistreated very badly. Now, they didn't give him much, of course, but at some point they gave him a radio. They gave this man a radio. And just to have something to do. And he said that he listened to the radio and heard a talk by the Pope, the Catholic Pope. Talk on what? On forgiveness, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be telling this story right now. Yeah, a talk on something random that would not fit this talk, but a talk on forgiveness. And he told the podcast host, Joe Rogan, I was on the point of trying to attack those pirates. Yeah, sometimes they didn't keep a close eye on their guns, and he thought maybe I can open my gate somehow. Have you heard this? Because you're nodding. Or were you also kidnapped by Somalian pirates? You were in the same place. Yeah, see? But he thought, I'm gonna grab one of their guns somehow, maybe through the pillars of his cell or whatever it was, and I'm gonna shoot them, and then they're gonna shoot me back, and then I'll die. Then at least I have some revenge, and they end this suffering. And he was on the point of doing that, planning it all out, and then he heard this talk about forgiveness. And he realized, wow, these pirates that he was gonna write a story about, he knew quite a lot about them already. They didn't go from a perfectly happy and content life suddenly into being a pirate. No, that whole area where they grew up was a big mess. Yeah, there were always conflicts and fights and lots of drugs, and these boys, I think he called them, grew up in that environment, and they were just conditioned by that. Yeah? They were mistreated themselves as well when they were young. And they were sort of almost inevitable that they were going to end up like this. And it's like, in Buddhism we talk about conditioning, right? People are conditioned to be a certain way. And then he realized, these guys, these boys, didn't really have much of a choice, and they sort of had to do that to me. That's the way they are, and what am I actually angry about? And I found that so inspiring. So then he was able to forgive those pirates for kidnapping him for that long and mistreating him. And I thought, wow, if somebody is able to forgive something like that, then is there any limit to what human beings can't forgive? Probably not. Probably everything is forgivable if we have the wisdom to see that people are conditioned in a way. And I don't know how he got out, but he was able to tell the story on the podcast, so he got out as well. So it all had a good ending in a way as well. And I suppose he had a good story to tell afterwards as well as a journalist. But that was inspiring, I found. And it reminded me also of a Buddhist story. He heard the Pope talk about forgiveness, but there's also sort of classical Buddhist story about forgiveness, which teaches many of the same things. And it's not from the suttas, but this is a story I've once heard, and there was a man, or, it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman. There were two people, and one person threw a rock at the other person. Bam! And then the other person got mad with that person. Why did they throw a rock at my face? Yeah, you would get angry probably if somebody just threw a rock at your face. And I went to see their Zen master. And the Zen master, why are you angry with that person? I said, well, they threw a rock in the face, and see now, got a whole wound here. Said the Zen master, well, then you should be angry with the rock instead. The rock is what caused the wound, not that person. That the rock hit you. Why are you not angry with the rock instead? I said, then the person who was hurt said, well, the rock was just thrown. It didn't have any say in the matter. It was just conditioned in a way and just hit me. And then the Zen master said, well, if you're not angry with the rock because it was just thrown, then you should also not be angry with that person because they were just thrown around by their own anger, by their own defilements in their mind, and they didn't have a choice in that. And this goes very deep, because in Buddhism we have this idea that there is no real self inside of us. Inside of each of you, you think there is like a core inside who makes all the decisions, who decides to misbehave or decides to behave rightly. And if we think that other people always have a free will and free choice to do right or wrong, then of course we become angry when they do wrong, because we're like, they should have acted better, they should have chosen differently. But if you see that people's choices are conditioned, then it's more easy to let go. And that's what I often use in my contemplation. If maybe somebody mistreated me a bit, as I said, I never get mistreated very badly so far. Maybe luck, maybe could come, I don't know. But if people do mistreat me, and I reflect on it like that. Yeah? And who's heard the story of the angry crocodile? Yeah, but most of you haven't, because I usually tell this on retreats. So I haven't told it here before, probably. No? But this is one of my favorite stories. So this is the story of the angry crocodile. Shall I tell it then? Yeah? Okay. I like telling stories with animals and stuff. And this story I've actually told before, so this story I should be able to tell properly, and like the one about the desert. Yeah? Ajahn Brahm has all these stories that he tells again and again and again. And I hear them again and again and again, and now I know why. Each time he is just practicing for the next time. Yeah. So the stories become better and better and better. So when I did the story of the desert and the writing in the sand, I was just practicing for next time. So thank you very much for letting me practice. But the story of the angry crocodile I have practiced a few times before. So there was, in the north of Australia, because I heard that there's crocodiles there was a river where the animals all wanted to come together to drink. You had the koalas, the kangaroos, the platypusi, I don't know what the plural is. You got the echidnas, all the animals in the forest wanted to come to that river to drink. But in that river, you guessed it by the title of the story, there was an angry crocodile. I practiced that bit the most of all. And when I told this story once in Poland, they had a translator. And he was a bit shy, that translator. So he translated everything, but not the roar. And I said, what's Polish for roar? And so he had to do it as well. Anyway, that's not part of the story. Angry crocodile, roar, this is my river. You don't belong in my river. And each time one of the animals would come close to the river, roar, the angry crocodile would eat the animal. Kangaroos in one bite, and he was upset with all those animals because they were using his river. And all the animals also upset with the crocodile. They could not forgive the crocodile for that, eating all their friends and using the river just for himself. That is so selfish of this crocodile, the worst crocodile in the whole of Australia and beyond. Rawr, always eating the animals. But one day, the angry crocodile was asleep, because even crocodiles need their beauty naps. And he was sleeping. And then there came a little tiny mouse, because also in Australia there's mice as well. And the mouse went quietly, trippy trip, trippy trapper trip, right into the crocodile's big gaping mouth. And what did he do? The mouse put his arms around the crocodile's tooth. And all the animals who saw it were like, don't go in the crocodile's mouth, he'll eat you alive. We like you, little mouse, come out. But the mouse put his arms even tighter around the crocodile's tooth. And then, whack! He pulled out the tooth, and the crocodile woke up. And what did he do? Of course, he did not eat the tiny mouse, because that would be a very bad story if he did. No, the crocodile was like, thank you so much, little mouse. That tooth has been hurting me for such a long time. And because of that, I was so annoyed and angry, and I was always biting and eating all the other animals. But now, imagine a crocodile with a big smile. I don't know. Can't do that. But he was no longer row, but he was very happy crocodile from that moment on. And he never bit any of the other animals ever again. And he shared the river with all the other animals, and no animals ever got eaten again. Wow, that is the story of the angry crocodile. And the moral of the story is, when people hurt you, when they try to bite you, eat you, figuratively speaking, it's because they're hurting inside themselves. And that hurt, they try to somehow get rid of by hurting somebody else. And if you realize that, if you see that, it's like if you see that the stone had no choice to hit your head, but the person also was throwing the stone because they were thrown around by their own anger. If you can see that, then it becomes easier to forgive other people. Yeah? Happy and content people will not purposely go out to hurt you. So that is one way that you can think about forgiveness. And maybe if while I'm saying this and telling these stories, maybe some person comes to mind to you, who you have some difficulty forgiving or something. maybe you can set some time aside one day, and maybe even meditation, and reflect upon these things. And see if you can forgive that person a little bit at least. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to forgive completely, but just a little bit. You see a little bit more of where they come from, and you can let go a bit. And then you'll find some more peace inside. Because if we can't forgive a person, it's like we are dragging that person along in our minds all the time, or the things they've done, we're dragging them inside ourselves, and that can be such a burden. And just to let go of that a little bit more, that makes life a bit more easy. So I would encourage you all to try that. But then there's one person in life who, for many people, is much more difficult to forgive. Who is that person? As often as yourself. Yeah. Forgiving others is one thing. Forgiving yourself is another thing. For the things you might have done to others, or the things you might have done to yourself even. Yeah. You might have hurt yourself in various ways. Could be addictions or whatever. Yeah. Maybe you have certain regrets in life. I should have done that, I should have done this. And you get upset with yourself. Please don't do that. Because you're also worthy of accepting yourself as you are. We all make mistakes in life. Or is there anybody here who never made a mistake? If you never made a mistake, then I invite you to come here and talk and tell us all, please, how did you do that? I want to know. How did you live your life without any mistakes? Nobody lives a life without mistakes. We all make mistakes. And we can forgive ourselves. But why is it so difficult to forgive ourselves sometimes? Well, that might not be the case for everybody, but I think some people can relate to this. That other people is more easy to forgive often than ourselves. Yeah? For other people it might be the other way around, but for many of us, ourselves is so much more difficult to forgive. And for many a year I was didn't understand why that is. And one day I've sort of figured it out, at least one reason why that could be. And this actually happened after I was doing some work in the monastery. And what I was doing is, this is kind of funny actually. In the monastery we have certain signs at places where we don't want visitors to go across that place. Because that's the monks area. So these signs say, monks area, stay out. No, that doesn't say stay out. Monks area, no entry or something like that. Yeah, it's just so people don't disturb the monks when they are practicing their meditation there. And at one point it also had a sign, trespassers will be converted. But anyway, this was a sign that said, monks area, no entry. And we had it actually near Jhana Grove, for those of you who know where it is. Because behind Jhana Grove we have some huts as well. And what happened, that sign got stolen. At some point it was just a pole there, no more sign on the pole. So I think in some teenager's boy's room or somewhere in a pub or an attic there now is a sign, monks area, no entry. Or on a teenager's room door or something like that. And I hope every time they see that sign they get reminded of the monks. And anyway, that's like what I like to imagine. But I had to make a new sign. But these signs were bought from some professional place. And I thought if I just make a sign out of wood, then people probably won't steal it, you know. So I'll make a sign out of wood. I used to do the woodworking in the monastery. So I took my wooden board. Let's say I took this, yeah. I'm just gonna improvise here. So I had my wooden board and I wrote the letters on it. Monks area, no entry, even correct spelling with the apostrophe for the monks, which it didn't have, because I wanted the sign, the old sign didn't have the apostrophe. I wanted my sign to be perfect, yeah? It was a wooden sign so people wouldn't steal it, but it still wanted to be perfect. So I wrote the letters and I wanted to chisel them out, right? Chisel out the letters. But this wood wasn't proper hardwood, and it kept chipping all the time. And the A in Monk's area, accidentally I took out the center of the A, and everything went wrong, and the E all ugly, and I was getting really upset with. Now I have to talk like this. With that sign and with myself. I thought I should be able to do better than this. This is a really ugly sign. How can I hang this up in a monastery? And while I was doing that, and seeing how ugly the sign was, a monk walked past, a few meters further. I can vividly remember this because it really struck me at the time. He said, beautiful sign, Sunyo. And then I realized, it's because I'm so close up to the sign. I can see all the flaws. But when you stand back, then it is beautiful. It's good enough anyway. And a sign. Nobody's gonna walk into the monastery and look at the sign like this. Like I was, they just see it from a distance, monk's area, no entry. That's good enough. And this is the simile for how we live our lives. We're so close to ourselves. And we see all our tiny little flaws, and they all sort of add up, and then we feel like we're so much worse than other people. We do so much bad, and other people might be so much better, Sometimes you hear monks saying in the monastery, all these other monks got good meditation, my meditation, and our past mistakes seem so much more ugly, in a way, than those of others. And I think that's because we're so close to ourselves. And that's how I was able to learn about forgiveness as well. I mean, making an ugly sign, that is not something you have to forgive yourself for. I mean, that's just, it was a fine sign, but that's not something you have to forgive yourself for. But sometimes you do more stupid things as a monk, anyway. We have all these precepts, sometimes you break them, and then I'm like, I had to break my precept, and I feel so bad, and then I zoom out, like I zoom out from the sign, and I look at my life as a whole, and not being so close, always trying to be so perfectionist about myself. And I'm able to forgive a lot more. And I found, to come back to the start of this talk, that is one powerful way to let go of the past. Especially in meditation, I find it's much more likely that your regrets about yourself, your own behavior, are to come up. Rather than thinking about other people. Does that make sense? You sit down and you start, I should have done this, should have said that, shouldn't have done this, shouldn't have done that. Now there's a reason why one of the prerequisites for meditation is to live a virtuous and good life, because then you have less regrets. It even says in the sutta, from less regrets you get joy, and from the joy you get the deep meditation. However, another way to let go of regrets, to have less regrets, is forgiveness. Forgive yourself for those past mistakes. You were also just thrown around, like the rock being thrown around. And let the wind blow away, like the wind blows away the writing in the sand. Let your forgiveness blow away those regrets, and then you'll be able to be more in the present. Find peace with yourself as you already are, because each of you deserve that. You're all very beautiful people. I know that, and I'm not just making that up or saying that to get you to like me or whatever. I really respect all of you, and you're such beautiful people, and please forgive whatever you've done in the past. That's the end of this talk. All right, excellent. Now, the person with the worst question, I will forgive as well. And the person with the best question, I will forgive as well. So is there anybody who has Any questions here? Doesn't have to be about forgiveness per se, can be more general questions as well.
Did the crocodile, when he changed his roar, die of hunger afterwards?
Did he die of hunger afterwards? The question is, did the crocodile die of hunger? No, because the crocodile became a vegan. And yes, and he ate such lovely food. Just like Sunyo, when people come to Bodhinyana, you can choose the meat, but Sunyo chooses the vegan food, and he is very happy and very healthy. So he actually, the angry crocodile might have died from a heart attack if he would have kept eating all those kangaroos, but now he was very healthy. I don't know. Good question. All right, no more questions from here. Then we'll do some from online. There's a question from Germany, from Wolfram. Dear Ajahn. Ajahn, yeah, you can say that, but the word Ajahn, oh, I don't even get to the question, but the word Ajahn means teacher. Acharya is the Pali word, and I'm the teacher, so you can say Ajahn. Usually we use that in Thailand. The tradition is to use that for monks who have 10 years as a monk or more. And I've got 9, so I'm not a teacher, so why am I here? Anyway. Dear Ajahn, is there a way to make the process of death less scary for me? Or maybe pleasant with insights? How to die without fear? How to meditate for that? Thank you kindly. To make the process of death less scary. That depends upon whether you might believe in rebirth or not. Yeah? In Buddhism, we teach about rebirth, but I realize that not everybody believes in rebirth. If you do, then you might be able to realize that if you live a good life, you listen to decent teachings, you meditate, and you try to follow the Eightfold Path, then the Buddha said you will also have a good death. Yeah? A bad death is not bad by itself, it's only bad for people who have lived a bad life. So if you live a good life, it doesn't have to be perfect, yeah, right? And because if you try to be perfect, then you get these regrets again, but if you just live a decent life, then you will have a decent rebirth as well. And the reason for that is, if you're happy with yourself, and you're content with your life, yeah? So this is where forgiveness also comes in. If you're able to forgive your so-called mistakes of the past, then when you do die, you're able to let all that go, and you sort of wish yourself well. And the idea is that if you wish yourself well, then you're also able to give yourself a good rebirth. That might be a little bit abstract, but you can have these insights actually, that is actually the case. So that's how insight can make death less scary, to answer that question. If you don't believe in rebirth, like I didn't used to accept the idea of rebirth for a long time when I was a lay person. I was very skeptical about it. But I still was not afraid of death. Because I thought, when I didn't believe in rebirth, I thought that's just the end. And I don't know, I never was afraid of it much. Maybe it's the realization that so many people have died before as well. Yeah? And there's nothing really to lose as well in that way. And the world will go on without you. And you leave behind your influence on other people. Yeah? So you live on in a way through the people you meet, through the exchanges you have with other people. Especially if you're a good person, you rub off that goodness on others. you're kind and peaceful, then other people get inspired, even if you might not notice or they might not specifically say so. So that lives on then as well. That's just some ways to think about it, but it can be an individual thing. Sometimes it's also when you are anxious or afraid of things, it's like I used to be afraid of dogs when I was younger, because I got attacked by a dog once, and since then I was very afraid of dogs. But the one way to get less afraid of dogs is by being more with dogs, and don't be always walking away when there's a dog, but actually trying to pet them. And in a way that's the same with death. If you're always scared of death, maybe just actually think about it a bit more. Meditate on the topic of death a bit more. And each time you do so, your fear and anxiety might decrease. Just like being with dogs, every time I got a little bit less scared of them. I'm still scared, or no, not really. So, peace, calm. Is that your name? Peace, calm. Dear Ajahn. Again Ajahn. That's all right. I'm not telling you off, just sometimes. That came up to me because it was either today or yesterday when we got to alms round in a monastery, and one person said, good morning, Ajahn. Oh, sorry, not Ajahn yet, he said, because he knew. But that's why that came up to me, otherwise I wouldn't have said that. But you can call me Ajahn, doesn't matter. What did you do to get to the point where you can be at peace at the present moment, no matter what, not longing for the beautiful past or worry about the future? What can we do what can we do when the present moment is uneasy? To rephrase that a little bit. To realize that by being in the present moment, you're making for a more beautiful future. It's by finding peace here and now that you can prepare for the future in a way. When I prepare for these talks, I don't practice my stories, as you might have noticed, with the story in the sand. I just sit and meditate and try not to think about anything. Just be there and get some energy. And realizing the benefits of meditation is one way to be able to settle in the present moment. You become more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? More and more familiar with the present moment. And it becomes easier and easier to just realize that being here and not to worry about the past or future is the best thing to do when you're meditating anyway. Sometimes you have to plan the future or learn from the past, but when you're meditating, you can be here right now. And just to live a whole life around meditation, like monks do, helps a lot as well, because your whole life is sort of structured in such a way that you can find happiness and peace. It helps a lot as well. Yeah, and also the forgiveness, to bring it back to this topic. Forgive yourself for the past, then that's already so much of a burden you can let go of. That's just some ways to do that. And be kind to yourself. I think it says here in the front. What does it say exactly? I can't read it from here. Make peace, be kind, be gentle. That's what you can do to make the present moment more easy. Make peace. Good, happy to be here. Be kind. Why fight with yourself or fight with the present moment? I can feel those emotions as I'm talking about it. And be gentle. Don't be so harsh on yourself. Don't have expectations of meditation. I say it brings so much peace and happiness, and then you sit down and you go, okay, well, where is that peace and happiness that Sunyo talked about? And Ajahn Brahm keeps going about these deep states of meditation. Why? That is desire. And don't have desire, then you find peace. It's fine. I can be the worst meditator in the whole of Nalamara, in the whole of the BSWA, in the whole of Buddhism. In the history of the world, I'll be the worst meditator ever, and I'm happy. When you do that, You're not the worst meditator, you're the best. Gloria asks, I am often very careful about the things I say because I know how much words may hurt. How to not get so attached to the meaning of words? Okay. When I first started learning to speak English, and I'm still learning because I'm originally not from an English-speaking country, as you might notice, from the Netherlands, then I said many stupid things, many wrong words, and maybe I also hurt some people by saying the wrong words that I didn't intend. But my intention behind the words, I try to make that at least as best as I can. Yeah? So if you come from a good place, if you have intentions to be kind, then you might still accidentally say the wrong thing. And you might hurt somebody accidentally. I think we've all been there. You have the best intentions, you say something to a person and they get upset. Yeah? And I noticed it sometimes in the monastery. One monk says something so kind to another monk, or just makes a joke or something like that to get them happy, and they interpret it completely wrongly, and then they get upset. And then you might be Gloria, you might be, I said the wrong thing, and now they're upset. But if you have good intentions, then you can fall back on that. You can know that you tried your best, and you will always be misinterpreted sometimes. Even the Buddha had enemies, and people misunderstood him sometimes as well, even though he had the best of intentions. So that's the nature of life, to sometimes hurt people through our words, even if we don't intend. But if you realize that you did have good intentions, that can give you something to rely on. The last question is maybe a little bit too deep to answer very briefly right now, so I might give another talk about that another time. So, thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish you all the best, including the people who asked these questions, and you do deserve all the happiness in the world. Please know that there's no reason why you shouldn't. Thank you. Let us now pay respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham